Now, I shouldn't have to do this, but I'm always amazed at how many people, especially most of you young people, believe that 9/11 was an inside job. Now, that for many of you, that means different things. Anywhere from the wacky thermite paint that planes didn't hit the building to the Central Intelligence Agency created it or knew about it or let it happen, to the Jews did it, to God knows what, the reptilians did it, or anything else. This isn't to say that I don't question or have any issues with what we call the official story. The problem with the official story is not what you would think it might be. The problem with the official story is that if you read the 9/11 Commission report, is that it ends, or rather, it starts with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, otherwise known as KSM, when it comes to 9/11. What it doesn't mention is Ramzi Youssef. You see, Ramzi Youssef was responsible for the first World Trade Center attacks. Ramzi Youssef is also the nephew of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. We are talking about the same people. Now, I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to argue with you about all the ins and outs of how buildings can properly fall and how they can't. What I can tell you is the proper history of the moment. I can tell you about specific actors, where they were, what they were doing at specific times. And if you were to believe that 9/11 was an inside job, you would have to believe a multitude of things. Since the first attack on the World Trade Center, I believe in 1993, is directly attached to the attack on the World Trade Center in 2001, seeing that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is the uncle of Ramzi Youssef, who was harbored in Iraq, by the way, then you would have to think that that World Trade Center attack was also an inside job. Further, if indeed the 9/11 attacks on the United States were an inside job, then so too were the Cole bombings. Yes, the Cole bombings committed by bin Laden against the USS Cole, the ship that was just attacked by Al Qaeda. That too must have been an inside job, right? We are talking about the same actors, correct? Also an inside job. How about the bombing in Tanzania or in Africa of our embassies there committed by Al Qaeda? I guess those two were inside jobs. Since, if 9/11 is an inside job, I would assume activities committed by Al Qaeda are all inside jobs. It makes you sound ridiculously and stupid if you understand the events of what was happening and when they were happening. All these things must be inside jobs, you do understand. They are all interconnected. They're all committed by the same actors. And if you are going to tell me that 9/11 was somehow an inside job, you would then have to explain to me how all these other activities committed by Al Qaeda, by bin Laden, were also inside jobs. Now, the argument always becomes that we actually trained Al Qaeda in the Mujahideen in the 80s against the Soviets in Afghanistan. One, if you knew anything about Afghanistan, you would know that there are a multitude of players, including the Northern Alliance, which was drastically against Al Qaeda and bin Laden in Afghanistan. There were British Secret Services, there were American intelligence services, there were our relationships with the Pakistanis, which go back a long, long time, and there are many players on the ground. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give you the list of all the players on the ground, and our dealings with Osama bin Laden himself is very strained and barely even mentionable because he did not like Westerners. He wouldn't deal with American Westerners. So yes, we did arm the Mujahideen against the Soviet Union. But as far as arming bin Laden himself, it's very strenuous and almost non-existent. In Afghanistan, Abdullah, foreign policy aide to Ahmed Shah Massoud; Mohammed Atef, Egyptian-born military commander in bin Laden's Al-Qaeda; Abdullah Azzam, Palestinian-born spiritual leader, headed Al-Qaeda precursor to group until 1989. Abrusad Dostum, former communist Uzbek military leader, sometime ally of Massoud; Mahmoud Fahim, intelligence and military aide to Massoud; Abdul Haq, Afghan Pashtun tribal and guerrilla leader, breaks with CIA during the late 1980s. Jaladani Haqqani, radical Afghan Islamist guerrilla leader, successful military commander, CIA and Saudi intelligence ally during the 1980s, joins the Taliban during the 1990s. Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, radical Afghan Islamist guerrilla leader, rival of Massoud. Ahmad Karzai, Afghan Pashtun tribal leader and political activist, initially backs Taliban, later joins Pashtun opposition to Taliban. Masoud Khalili, schoolmate and close aide to Ahmed Shah Massoud. Osama bin Laden, Saudi-born leader of Al-Qaeda after 1989. Ahmed Shah Massoud, Tajik guerrilla commander, leads anti-Soviet resistance in northern Afghanistan, later forms Northern Alliance, and leads opposition to Taliban. By the way, this individual was assassinated on 9/10/2001 by Taliban and Al-Qaeda forces who presented themselves as media to him for an interview. The cameraman blew himself up. President Najibullah, Soviet-backed Afghan communist leader, Mullah Muhammad Omar, supreme leader of the Taliban after 1996, self-declared emir of Afghanistan, Burhanuddin Rahmani, a Cairo-trained Islamist scholar, political leader of Massoud's party, and Mullah Mahmoud Rabini, Taliban leader forward by Saudi Arabia, seen as possible martyr. Mullah Salah, intelligence aide to Massoud. Abdullah Rasul Saif, Cairo-trained Islamist scholar, Saudi-backed guerrilla leader. Ayman al-Zawahiri, later became the number 2 man in Al-Qaeda, Egyptian-born leader of Islamic Jihad, close ally of bin Laden after 1998. So, when you're beginning to tell me that Osama bin Laden was trained by the United States, and you have no concept of the region, of the players, and who was who, and who was backing who, please, if you can, for the love of God, shut the fuck up. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. The main point here is that there are people who have no idea about the region who are telling us what happened. They have no concept. Now, I'm not an engineer. Now, but in order for me to believe that 9/11 again was an inside job, there's an entire list of consequences and of people and of actions that have happened pre-9/11 that you would have to tell me are all either inside jobs or never happened. None of that is true. The history of Islamic Jihad and the attacks against the West are long. They didn't just come to light in 9/11. It wasn't the Jews. It was 19 hijack. Yeah, I know. It's hard for you to believe. Many of you young people find it very difficult to believe, and it really doesn't fit your narrative. I mean, your narrative is if we just left the Middle East, then by God, all these Islamists would leave us alone. That's simply not the case. That's not what happened. Let me put this to you in this perspective. If indeed we armed the Mujahideen, including Osama bin Laden, to oust the Soviets during the 1980s, wouldn't you think a thank you would be in order? Thank you for getting rid of the communist Reds. What is it? We can't be involved in foreign affairs, stick our nose into other people's businesses? I thought you wanted to get rid of the Reds. You asked us to get rid of them. Maybe you didn't ask us. We helped you get rid of the Reds, right? Did we not? How about thank you? That would be appreciated. That's the proper response if you're not a savage animal. If you're not an asshole. But no, we get this. Aligning with the Mujahideen in the 80s against the Soviet Reds makes us responsible for 9/11 about as much as us siding with the Reds against Nazi Germany in World War II to win the Eastern Front. And let's not forget, without the Russians, we would not have won the Eastern Front, despite whatever revisionist historian will tell you. It is the Russians who won the Eastern Front. This is the real world. You get to choose between bad guys. There are no good guys. You have to pick your alliances. Sometimes you have to get in bed with assholes who are the enemies of your enemies. Sometimes even that's not an option. See Syria. See Lebanon. Sometimes it's best to stay out of the entire thing. Sometimes you don't have an option. We picked the Soviets over the brown shirts in World War II. Are we responsible for the Cold War? We picked the Mujahideen over the Soviets in Afghanistan. Are we responsible for 9/11 because these fucking turncoats bit the hand that fed them? I think not.